Hello, you might be watching this video and know me for my Mega Man content, but I wanted to try something a bit different today, so tell me if I should make more content like this where I'm reviewing a single game. With that said, enjoy the video. Ah yes, Mario Kart. If you've been alive, then you've definitely played at least one Mario Kart game in your life. For me, the first Mario Kart game I ever played was Mario Kart 7. Nowadays, the most recent game in the series is Mario Kart World. But in my opinion, the newest installment is pretty good and definitely shows how much the series has evolved over the years. But today, I want to go back. Like 30 years, back to 1996, when Mario Kart 64 was first released on the Nintendo 64. This game was made in just months and really pushed the Nintendo 64 to its limits. It was a big sequel to Super Mario Kart for the next big console. The game released in Japan only months after Super Mario 64 originally released. People were excitedly awaiting the next big Mario Kart installment for the new revolutionary 3D console. And when the game was released, it was met with good reviews from critics for the game's innovative gameplay and 4-player Grand Prix mode. To this day, many people remember Mario Kart 64 and have a bunch of nostalgia for playing it, but has it really aged as well as these nostalgia baiters say so? Today, I'm going to solve that question as I review the game and also rank every track, so let's get started. Before getting into the tracks, how does the gameplay and the controls hold up? Not very much. I'll give this game some credit, it was one of the very first Mario Kart games, but the controls just feel really slippery and drifting especially feels really loose. It feels like you're a stick of butter drifting on top of an oily pan. But I'll stop being mean for now, as once again, this was a very early Mario Kart game from 30 years ago, and it definitely controls better than its predecessor, Super Mario Kart. One thing that's really cool about this game is the multiplayer. Well, I don't really have 4 friends of mine who want to play Mario Kart 64, but I still think it's a cool feature for a racing game from 1996. The character roster may be pretty small, but we do have some cool characters, except that Kamek was cut out as a racer, but at least he's in the Booster Course Pass in a deluxe, so I guess that makes up for it. Anyway, whenever I play this game, I usually just pick Toad as my racer. But still, look at all these characters. This is the first time Mario was a playable racer, and basically the other popular Mario characters from the time the game was released are also there. 8 characters might not seem like a lot of racers nowadays, but when this game was released, there wasn't any generic kart racer with 8 racers. I'll get to more of this game, but for now, enough stalling. It's time for the Mushroom Cup. Aw yeah! The very first track in the Mushroom Cup and the first track in the entire game is Luigi Raceway. Obviously, the beginning track doesn't have to be super amazing since it's just a tutorial of the game's mechanics like drifting. Although, there isn't a lot going on here, just a straight and boring pathway with a big tunnel at the end of the track. It doesn't surprise me that after Mario Kart 7 they never brought this track back again. Overall, not a lot to say other than this is a pretty boring track overall. The next track in the Mushroom Cup is Moo Moo Farm. This track would be shamelessly ripped off in Mario Kart Wii as Moo Moo Meadows, which is honestly a bit of a better track. This one though has only been brought back in DS. Like Luigi Raceway, this stage is just a boring and generic tutorial racetrack. There's not even a big jump in this track. The Mushroom Cup doesn't have to be this boring. Moo Moo Farm is better than Luigi Raceway, but only because of the cows. The next track that the Mushroom Cup has to offer us is Koopa Troopa Beach. Unlike the last two, this track has the mindset of just because it's in the Mushroom Cup doesn't mean it has to be boring, unlike the previous two tracks in the cup. Koopa Troopa Beach is pretty memorable for its humongous recreation of a Koopa Troopa shell that you have to drift around at the beginning of the track. This track is pretty neat honestly, so it's at the top of the list for now. To wrap up the Mushroom Cup in this game, it's the train track. Do you get it? This is a racetrack that also trains go on tracks. Bad joke aside, this track is super memorable. I haven't mentioned the music much yet, but Calamari Desert has such memorable and incredibly fitting music. This track may be a bit of a straight line like the other tracks, but a train in the middle of the desert is such a fun idea that it would never be wrong to consider it the best Mushroom Cup track in Mario Kart 64. I think that overall, the Mushroom Cup in this game is a good tutorial for the game and gets better the farther you get into the cup. There are definitely some memorable things about the Mushroom Cup in Mario Kart 64, but I think it's really boring for the most part. But now, since I've shared my thoughts on the Mushroom Cup in Mario Kart 64, it's not time to move on to the Flower Cup just yet. Now it's time to talk about the blue shell and some other items. Now it's time to talk about the part of Mario Kart that makes people lose their friends. The items in Super Mario Kart included the mushroom, the green shell, the red shell, the coin, the banana peel, and the lightning. Well, in Mario Kart 64, the coin item is removed. What did they replace the coin item with? The blue shell. This item homes in on the person in first place, and it can cause some raging in this game, since there's no way to protect yourself from it. It's a pretty good way to let the last person in last place catch up. But it's also horrible because there's absolutely no way to protect yourself in this game. It's not only frustrating, but straight up unfair because the CPUs in this game can easily catch up to you. But what about the other items? The other items are literally the signature Mario items. The mushroom gives you a speed boost, and the green shell can attack the person in front of you and hide you. The red shell is the same as the green shell, but it's a homing missile. Banana peels you can just throw on the ground and try to hit someone with it, or protect yourself from the green shell and red shells with it. The lightning bolt is the signature catch-up mechanic as the person in last place. You use it, and then everybody will hate you afterwards. After this, there's just one last item, the fake item box. This item acts like an item box with an upside-down question mark that can damage you. It's a pretty dangerous item in this game that would be nerfed in future installments just to be completely red. It makes sense why they would nerf the item, but they didn't have to make it obvious that it looks completely different from the other regular item boxes and just acts like a banana peel. So those are basically the items in Mario Kart 64. But now, enough yapping about items. I know that you all want to see some more Mario Kart tracks. Now, let's move on to the Flower Cup. To start off the Flower Cup, we have Toad's Turnpike, which I think in the future inspired Moonview Highway from Mario Kart Wii. This track is all about dodging the trucks and cars on the busy street. It's a very fun track, even if fitting between the vehicles is a bit tight. Visually, this is one of the best tracks in the entire game. The vibe of this track gives such an ethereal jam to it. The music really helps with this vibe of the track that it wants you to feel. This track overall really has something special to it that simply can't be described by words. The next track in the Flower Cup is Frappe Snowland. Here, there's a bunch of snowmen just in your way and at the end of the track. you go through a big tunnel like you do in Luigi Raceway. I think that this track does a great job at making it feeling like a winter wonderland. The music is very happy and bright and definitely feels like Christmas. It really helps the vibe of this track overall and makes it very memorable. It does a great job at being a real snowland, and it's a pretty good track at the end of the day. Choco Mountain. Does anything really need to be said? It doesn't even feel like chocolate. Just look at how bland this track looks. In my opinion, it's one of the blandest and ugliest looking tracks in the entire game. The gameplay isn't good either, as the only real challenge is dodging rocks. With a game with this much of an atmosphere with its other 3D stages, Choco Mountain is a disappointment. The only thing I really enjoy about it is the catchy music. But to end off the Flower Cup, we have another circuit. Why is this at the end of the Flower Cup? Questionable placement in the Flower Cup aside, Mario Raceway is definitely better than Luigi Raceway because of more decoration in the track. This track definitely had more effort put into it than Luigi Raceway. There's a bunch of trees and billboards like the other tracks in the game. You go through a tunnel once again, and at the end of the track, this time, there's a big pipe. Aside from these things, this is a pretty mediocre way to end the Flower Cup. Overall, the Flower Cup is pretty solid for the most part. It's definitely a way better cup than the Mushroom Cup with a better range of quality. Although Choco Mountain is still kinda bad in my opinion. Aside from that one, the two tracks, Toad's Turnpike and Frappe Snowland, definitely captivated a deep feeling of atmosphere and etherealness. But I want to avoid getting way too deep with this silly and quick conclusion to the Flower Cup in this silly YouTube video about Mario Kart 64, so I'd like to move straight ahead to the 3D areas and the 2D racers. In Mario Kart 64, the game appears to be 3D, as the level itself has a bunch of 3D polygons, but the racers are 2D because when this game was being developed by Nintendo, there just wasn't enough memory in the system to include 3D racers alongside the 3D areas and the other stuff that was included. Obviously, the 2D racers end up looking very ugly in the 3D areas, but if you ignore that the racers are 2D, then the 3D areas are very appealing for the most part. When the tracks look nice, they end up looking very nice, especially for a Nintendo 64 game from all the way back then in 1996. It's an absolutely impressive game for the time with its 3D visuals. The 2D visuals, on the other hand, are very noticeable. It isn't just the racers, but it's also the billboards, the trees in Mario Raceway, etc. Despite being for the Nintendo 64, there isn't really that much 3D in it, other than the areas themselves. But now, I think it's about time that we move right along from this conversation to the Star Cup. Man, how would you be this insane to start the Star Cup with such an abysmal track? Every single lap lasts forever on this track and it isn't very fun. What person at Nintendo was like, we need to start the Star Cup with Wario Stadium? An insanely long and boring nightmare of a track will compel people. This has gotta be one of the worst tracks in any kart racer. The track is also extremely visually unappealing with a million PNGs of Wario's face copied and pasted across the walls. This track was brought back in Mario Kart World and it's a way better track in that game, but the original version still sucks. The bumps are just pointless and annoying. It doesn't try to anything to stand out on its own. The only thing that overall that stands out is that it's by far the worst track in the game. It can't get any worse than this in the game, and even if a track later on is really bad, it's nowhere near the badness of this horrible nightmare of a track. So let's just move on to the other tracks in the Star Cup so I can be less negative, hopefully. The next track in the Star Cup is another snow-themed track. Sherbet Land also includes a whole bunch of penguins, and I sure love penguins, especially penguins from Super Mario 64. This track is pretty similar to Frappe Snowland, except there are absolutely no snowmen. But the penguins really make up for the lack of snowmen in the track. I find Sherbet Land pretty fun to play on and a solid track overall. The part where you go into a big extended cave is also a really cool highlight of the track experience as well. Definitely a great Mario Kart 64 track. Here's the one and only track where you can drive up to Peach's castle. Not only that, but before seeing Peach's castle, there's also a big jump and a big speed boost before that big jump as well. In my opinion, Royal Raceway is another great track. Sure, it's just a bunch of easy turns, but the memorable parts of this track really elevate it on my ranking of tracks in Mario Kart 64. Royal Raceway is just overall a fun track all the way through. It's definitely getting a high placement on the list. To end off the Star Cup is Bowser's Castle. It feels pretty weird that Bowser's Castle is in the Star Cup instead of the Special Cup, but I could live with it. Though I feel like a track like this should be reserved for the second to last track in the game. It's still a nice little ending to the Star Cup, with just how scary the atmosphere of this track is. There's so many mysteries surrounding this track, like who Mario is. You know, the one swamp trapped in the cage? Why would Bowser trap one of his own minions in this cage? Was he simply too dangerous? Overall, the Star Cup just shows that the cups get better and better over the rest of Mario Kart 64. It started horribly with Mario Stadium, but then later on in the cup, I actually enjoyed the rest of the tracks that it had to offer. Sherbet Land, Royal Raceway, and Bowser's Castle, as you can see, are currently very high above the list right now. But there's just one more cup. It's a very special one. So I'm just going to get straight into it. No more analysis of other parts of the game. It's time we dive right into the final stretch. Starting off the Special Cup, DK's Jungle Parkway has a lot going on. This is the very first DK themed track in the series, and it's also the first time Mario's ever raced in a big jungle. There's some really neat visuals and decoration in this jungle as well. The big steamboats in the water are very cute, and like Sherbet Land, you can go in the big tunnel, except this time there are no penguins, so I'm sad. Not even any monkeys? With that huge issue aside, this track is still pretty good and a solid way to open up the Special Cup. Do you remember Choco Mountain? Well, Yoshi Valley is basically a better version of that track. Here lies a track with a bunch of alternative paths, so every playthrough of the track is basically different, which I think is pretty cool. The music is also really catchy and memorable in this stage as well, and really fits the theming of the track. I really like the part of the track with the giant spinning egg. Overall, this track is really fun, and all of the different possibilities in this track when playing it makes it even better. The second to last track in this game is of course Banshee Boardwalk. This right here is the spooky ghost track of Mario Kart 64. There's also a humongous fish in the track, which makes it even more hype than it already is. This track, I would say, is very memorable, not just for the big fish, but also the ghost haunting you across a boardwalk while you race is a very cool idea. But now, we just have one more very special track to get to. You already know what it is, but I'll keep it a surprise anyway. The very final track in the whole game is, like every other Mario Kart game, is Rainbow Road. People absolutely love to glaze this track as part of their childhoods, and I could see why. The visuals with the fireworks of Mario characters and the banger music is truly magical. Although, as a track, it lasts for way too long and has an extremely simple design. This is supposed to be Rainbow Road, and while it feels magical, it also feels empty and stretched out. It's nowhere near as bad as Wario Stadium though. That track is still a nightmare. Rainbow Road has a lot of stuff going on in the stage, like chain chomps to dodge, and that can be fun, but it is still by far the longest lasting stage in the game, lasting 6 minutes. But because of the amazing visuals and music, this track is luckily not an F tier or D tier. Consider yourself lucky, Rainbow Road. So after all of this, what's my conclusion of Mario Kart 64, you ask? Well, I think that this game was definitely an amazing kart racer for the time. It's definitely a humongous improvement over the previous installment, Super Mario Kart. Sure, this game may have loose controls and drifting that takes a long while to get used to, but I still think that Mario Kart 64 was definitely great for its time. It just hasn't aged well. While I think the nostalgia for this game is fair, it just doesn't hold up very well in my opinion. If you paid any attention to me yapping about every track in this game, you would know I really like a lot of the tracks here. Some tracks, though, are really mediocre or straight up terrible. They're made even worse because of the slippery controls. But I know that what you all watching the video have been waiting for. Here's every single track in Mario Kart 64 ranked from worst to best. So here it is. At number 16 is Mario Stadium, then Choco Mountain, Rainbow Road, Luigi Raceway, Moo Moo Farm, Koopa Troopa Beach, Mario Raceway, DK's Jungle Parkway, Yoshi Valley, Frappe Snowland, Royal Raceway, Sherbet Land, Bowser's Castle, Calamari Desert, and number 1 on the list is Toad's Turnpike. Well, it's finally over. I think I mentioned everything except for Battle Mode. If you want my opinions on Battle Mode, that can make a whole separate video on the evolution of Battle Mode in the franchise. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Also, if this video ends up getting 15 likes, then I will make a video about Mario Kart Double Dash. So you should definitely like the video if you want to see that. This is a bit of an experiment, as I mentioned way back in the beginning of the video. I might do some other videos like this that aren't Mega Man related in the future as well, so definitely stay tuned for that. But anyway, I hope you have a marvelous day, and I'll see you in the very next video.